Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators. It's Tuesday night again, apparently, and we're invading Tim Rathbone's living room. Thanks, Tim, for having us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks,
Megan,
Tim.
why don't you tell people a little bit about our Sunday show?
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, so our Sunday show, Gene and Randy and I have started a new podcast called the Salt Lake Expositor, where we are basically doing the same thing that the Nauvoo Expositor did. We are trying to call attention to the unhealthy and harmful behaviors of the LDS Church and the leadership of the LDS Church as it affects the everyday member. We are talking about current news stories, but we're also talking about what causes the LDS Church to behave the way that they do today. Not just talking about the symptoms of what is going on in the news, but the inherent architecture that has made Mormonism and what has contributed to the symptoms that are happening today, and talking about solutions, how to solve it, how to make things better.
Megan, you're so freaking eloquent.
I don't know if that's true.
The most eloquent of us all.
Yes.
Ditto.
I would concede to that.
Ditto. Yes.
Well, I'd agree.
I don't always have the right words, but when I don't have the right words, I consult my seer stone, and it makes everything better. So,
I have a seer stone that Amanda gave me, but it only fits like one sentence at a time. I need to have it grow a little bit.
Well, my seer stone only fits one letter at a time. It's very, very small.
Oh my goodness!
And that's why I wear these glasses, because my eyes are getting worse.
I've got seer stone envy.
I have my own seer stone.
Got the hat?
Got the hat.
You need a white hat.
Oh, okay.
So it has to be a white top hat or white.
Part of the news has been the Widow's Mite report that they're actually, I think Mormonism Live and other places covered the Widow's Mite report that talks about, I think Brother Anderson, we'll say brother, talks about how the Widow's Mite did all the calculations that figure if they have funds in these type of instruments, these instruments are taxable. I think even if you're a charitable organization, right?
Yeah.
And so they go through all that stuff. And have you learned anything more about that, Megan?
Well, the Widow's Mite wants to estimate that according to the tax filings that have already been revealed and the things that, the LDS Church had all of these shell companies, they were fined $5 million. Based on those filings, the Widow's Mite has projected out that the Mormon Church owes about $90 million in taxes. And for those of us who know the entirety or we suspect the entirety of the wealth of the LDS Church, if you believe the Widow's Mite report, which this is a conglomerate of people both inside and outside the Mormon Church reporting on statistics that have been published and also unpublished, they estimate the wealth of the LDS Church to be somewhere around $290 million currently.
Billion.
Sorry,
Billion.
You're right. $290 billion. Currently.
And that's more than Tim has.
Way more than I have.
To put that in perspective, the British royal family, with all of its lands, holdings, jewels, everything, they're only worth about $80 billion. The entirety of the Catholic Church, with all of the land and cathedrals that they own worldwide, is only worth about $18 billion. So the LDS Church, if they decided that they wanted to, they could spend $1 million every single day, and they would not run out of money for 800 years, even if they never earned another penny on interest for the rest of their existence. So it is a staggering amount of wealth that they have. And even though they have stepped up their charitable giving over the last few years, largely because of the Widow's Mite report coming out, over the last couple of years, they have spent about $1 billion last year and about $900 million the previous year on charitable giving. But if you consider the fact that they have almost $300 billion, if they followed their own counsel and tithed their earnings and paid about 10% of their earnings out, they would be giving away $30 billion a year and not just $1 billion.
Well,
their current operating budget right now is about $7 billion a year, and they take in about between $8 and $9 billion a year. So their surplus in their budget is almost $1 billion. So they can give away $1 billion a year without touching any of the principal that they have invested.
What's crazy about that too is even the number that they represent as being their charitable giving is fudged, because they're taking the volunteer hours that people giving them a financial estimate, and then basically saying, well, this is what the members give, therefore we're going to count that. One, that's fundamentally dishonest. And two, it when you go to members and you talk about these financial issues, they don't know that. And so the members themselves are ignorant as to the actual situation of what they're claiming, which works out well for the church, right? But, it's so frustrating, because you sit there and you read this and you go, that's not true. And then you have to push it. And I remember I worked in the bishop's storehouse when I worked for the church. I remember you'd go upstairs and there would be these huge pallets of stuff, and you're like, that's the humanitarian aid that they would send out. And the warehouse was just massive, right? But it was almost always just toiletries and basic materials. It was never stuff like building schoolhouses or, all this other stuff. So that's always been a big deal for me when I think about it. But that's amazing.
I think when I was in the elders quorum, I moved out and in enough people to be about $500 million worth of labor.
At least. Yes, at least.
That is a huge problem.
How many of those people came to church? I remember moving families. They never showed up at the ward. They call, we move them in, and I would never see them at church.
Yeah, there were always people you didn't know.
You didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the big problem here is, as Unoriginal Jim is saying here, that the LDS Church is counting the service hours of all of the people that serve in the temple and that serve in lay positions in the church on every single Sunday. They're counting all of those hours, all of those volunteer hours. They're putting a monetary figure to that, and they're counting it in what they've contributed as far as their financial contribution, which is not really, it's dishonest. Frankly, it's dishonest, because they didn't actually give that money to anybody. What they did was they took the service hours of those individual people. They did not pay those people for those service hours. And then they calculated that into that $1 billion figure. So if we think about all of the people who are volunteering in the churches and the temples, day in, day out, all across the world, how many hours? I mean, if each of us right here, just on this panel, figured on an average week, how many hours did we give in service to the LDS Church? And at what rate should that be compensated? How much would that add up to? I often have thought, not only do I want my tithing money back, but I want to be compensated for the volunteer hours that I gave to the MFMC when all of my friends who were all getting degrees in musicianship throughout the years, all of us were music majors, and my friends were working church jobs 20 hours a week, and some of them were getting paid thousands of dollars a month to do church music for their churches. And yet I was playing the organ, I was volunteering to sing solos, I was preparing the choir, I was doing rehearsals before and after church for choirs, never got compensated for any of that. And yet my family was destitute. We were on food stamps. We were declaring bankruptcy. We were paying our tithing, even though we didn't have enough money to buy food for our children. And yet we weren't being compensated for all of the hours that we were spending contributing to the church, running the church machine, when other churches were fairly compensating the people who were contributing to those services.
Well, and shouldn't we be allowed to add up all that?
When I fed the missionaries, they were billing it towards some type of service? Is that's kind of what I'm hearing you're saying, Megan, that all of the different services?
Yeah. So if you go and you did a shift at the cannery, right? Then what they're going to do is they're going to track, like they'll send out letters and they'll say, hey, look, we need 15 volunteers to bag sand. Okay. And so they're going to say, okay, we had 15 people show up. What's the average minimum wage that they're going to earn that we can take that to? And then what they do is they add that. So there's a reason why they keep track of how many volunteers they have, why they send those letters, why bishops have to report it, because it all comes back to a financial stratagem that they have to make everything look good. So add on top of that, the area where I live, we've had a lot of flooding. The church may as well not even exist in Appalachia because we still have people down in Mingo who are walking across railroad tracks to get to their houses because the bridges are still flooded out here, right? What you don't see is the coordinated effort with this humanitarian fund to fix stuff like that. Rather, if they do, it's usually thrown up like, hey, look at the members in this area. Look at it's always used. They take the time and then they'll throw it up so it looks really good. They can put it on LDS News. You know, it's all tied back to this feel-goodism, which points back to the institution rather than actually the honest Christian giving that should be done quietly and should be done, you know, with, you know, that G.K. Chesterton once got in trouble for giving money to a poor man, right? And he looks at the guy and goes, well, why are you giving him money? Because he's just going to use it on alcohol. And Chesterton says, well, God didn't tell me to scientifically give. He just told me to give, right? That should be the idea, but that's not the idea. Instead, in church, we're told not to give money to poor people because send them to the church and they'll take care of it themselves. So frustrating.
Shouldn't we be allowed to add up all of the volunteer hours and figure out what the value is of that and deduct it on our taxes? I never see anyone doing that.
Randy.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You mean our tithing?
Yeah.
Not just our tithing, but you know, I was a ward missionary in my ward during a time when we were baptizing 30 people a year. And so when I was a ward missionary, it was literally a part-time job. I was teaching new member lessons 3 nights a week, sometimes, you know, bringing my kids along because their dad didn't want to watch them. But, you know, I was teaching new member lessons to so many people for, you know, those 3 nights that I would go out and I would teach 2 lessons for every single night. So we're talking, you know, 4 to 6 hours every evening. So it's literally a part-time job. I would have loved to receive some kind of wages for that, for basically sucking people back into the church. Once they've gotten baptized and they've gone inactive, I was out there trying to reactivate these people so that they would come to church and pay their tithing. Many of them probably did. Even if they didn't pay me an hourly wage, but they paid me some kind of percentage on the tithing that those people paid, that would have been nice compensation. You know, I would have taken anything at that point.
Right?
Your reward was in heaven. And I see what you're saying, Randy. You're saying
that's what they told me.
If we did what the church does, then we would get a deduction from our taxes from all the, like if I helped a lady across the street, right? I could deduct that from my taxes.
Right. And all of the meetings, the bishopric meetings or whatever your position is, the in-service, the training.
Ward council.
Other people get paid for that in other churches. So, you know, we should be able to count it as
if you set up some shell companies, it'll be even better now. Set up a few shell companies.
Follow the church of this as well.
Yeah, right? All my deductions go through the Seychelles Islands, right? Seychelles. Ever.
What's even more fascinating about what you guys have pointed out, right, is in other religious faiths, right? So if you go to a non-denominational church, and they say, hey, we need volunteers to do something. You can volunteer to clean the floors. You can volunteer to mow. You can say, hey, I would really love to be involved with this. And they'll find a way to use your volunteer service in a way that reflects your skill. Mormonism does not allow this. Mormonism, you have to be called to a position. So it's not actually service, because you're not saying, I'm going to volunteer to do this. They are saying, we are going to give you a responsibility from God. And if you don't do it, you're failing God. And we are told not to turn down callings, right? So this isn't even service. This is what people do because they think they're morally obligated to for the religious institution. And people will do it against their will. They will complain about it. I have people in my family who openly complain about the fact that they do, but they continue to do it. So it's not actually service if it can be held against you by your religious leader for not doing it.
So it's not so much voluntary.
No, and I will just tell you guys. So, I mean, a lot of you know, and I've talked about this before, where my former spouse was not an active member, and I was bringing my 6 kids to church by myself for a lot of years. And at the height of my Mormonism, I had 4 different callings. And so I was the ward music chairman. I was also playing the organ at least twice a month. I was a ward missionary, and I was teaching Relief Society once a month. And at that point, one of the bishop's counselors called me into his office and said, hey, we would like to call you now to also help out with the children's meeting once a month, whenever the primary gets together. And I had kids in primary, so they're like, you're going to be there anyway. I said, okay, if you could release me from the ward music chairman job, I'd be happy to accept this other job, because I had held that job for literally 10 years. I was the ward music chairman. And I said, anybody can hold that job. It doesn't require somebody with musical training, which I have. Anybody can hold that job. If they read the handbook, they're going to be just fine. And this guy looked at me, and he was a friend of mine, I thought. He looked at me and he said, that ward music chairman job is, it's taxing on you, is it? It's taking a lot of your time, is it? And I was like, look, I already have 4 jobs. You're wanting to give me a 5th job and then try to shame me for wanting to let go of the one that I've held the longest, which was for 10 years. Screw you, dude.
Yeah, no kidding. If you have his name and address, I'll go kick his ass.
Go ask somebody else,
I had the different experience where I lived in Albany, Georgia. We lived on base and brand new housing. My daughter was young. I think she was 8. And so it was just us, a three-member household. And for family home evening, we would invite single soldiers to come over, different Marines to hang out for family home evening. We ended up getting a nice group of about 12 people, some members, some not. And after about 3 months, not my husband, but I got called into the bishop's office and was told to shut it down. And then I was no longer allowed to invite people to my home for family home evening. Don't understand why but it was me creating a calling, basically. And you can't do that either.
What the hell was wrong with a little charity and love and appreciation for what they're doing for our nation?
Nope. Couldn't do it.
Why would you do that? Why would you be kind and charitable like Jesus Christ was? That's just ridiculous. Shame on you.
I know.
How dare you?
Now that's interesting, because in the Academy Ward in Colorado Springs, the ward I was in was Air Force Academy, and we used to have an Academy student come over to our house a couple of times a month for a meal and talk and stuff. That was the same thing, and you're doing it with them when they told you to shut it down. It's crazy. Insanity.
So that's just stupidity.
When it comes to the Widows Mite report, and it's saying that it looks like tax evasion might be there, right? We've talked about how they report all this. I know, and Megan, you may know more, but from what I understand, going back to the SEC issue, there's been rumblings that there's other investigations out there that are pending. I've heard RFM reference it. Do they know something about this coming up, or are they just speculating based upon what they're looking at that this is coming up?
Okay, I have a friend that works for the IRS in Ogden, and she told me that something is afoot. So
Good.
Something strange is afoot at the Circle K. I like this.
Let me see. When was the first time? Let me go back in that. When was the first time that we found out about this?
Because I know we've heard about IRS issues going back to the whistleblower case, but then those reports seem to like peak for a little bit. People talk about them and then they drop off. So with this hitting the Deseret, this hit the Salt Lake Tribune, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's right. Just yesterday.
So when did she tell you this?
Hang on, I'm going through my messages.
Well, all that could happen is they'll pay a fine, and then it'll be some bad PR. But they already had that at the SEC. Nothing happened really.
So the SEC thing, like people can rationalize that, right? So you talk to people who don't really know what they're talking about, and they're all like, "Oh, well, it was a paperwork issue," or all this other stuff. Like, there's all kinds of different ways they rationalize it. I think if the finding comes out that there's tax evasion, that will escalate it higher than the SEC thing, because the SEC thing, to comprehend that, you kind of have to dig into it. You have to read what the SEC said. But I think that if it comes out that it's actual tax evasion, it'll be picked up by more outlets because it's easier to understand and easier to digest. I think it will be fundamentally worse than the SEC issue.
Yeah, so this is the Salt Lake Tribune article from 2 days ago where they say tax evasion appears evident. And this is the Widow's Mite report alleging that the LDS Church may owe the IRS $90 million. So they say there's strong evidence that they underreported hundreds of millions of dollars in taxable income. Now, of course, the church is going to dispute it. But basically what they're saying is that Ensign Peak failed to report $450 million in taxable business income. And if that's true, they're going to owe up to $90 million. Now, we know that that is a drop in the bucket. It's not going to make a dent. They don't care. $5 million was like a pinprick. $90 million is a drop in the, they just don't, they don't care. But what it's going to do is it's going to create a lot of negative PR for the church, and they're going to have to do a lot of damage control on the front of, defending these decisions in the public eye.
And there's a lot about Ensign Peak that we don't know about. And so we should get Tim working on getting a friend inside that organization. And then we can do an expose and we can call it Ensign Peak, P-E-E-K.
Okay. It was June 21st, around June 20th or 21st, is when Mormonism broke the story. But there have been hints at that before that. But I contacted her in June, and she's told me that you have to send in the report to the IRS.
Yes.
But you can't. They won't. Widows won't make their report printable. I asked them if they could give me a PDF, and they wouldn't. They didn't want to do that. So you have to go to the IRS site and send a link in, a hyperlink to them. And the more complaints they get, the better, she said. The more, the better.
Tim, if you find that link, I'll try to, you send to me in the chat or something. I'll try to get it there.
Okay, let me see.
The other thing I was thinking we could talk about is our own experiences growing up. And I wanted to introduce everybody to Unoriginal Jim. Jim, wave your hand. Jim was actually co-host with Rebecca on a show that appeared today. He's also been on Mormonish a couple times and Mormonism Live, and to talk about. Go ahead, say what you've done there, Jim.
So I've never done Mormonism Live. I've talked to Bill 2 or 3 times, just kind of in passing. But I did like I said, I did my first Mormonish episode in November of last year, I think. And like I said, so my background is aviation safety and regulations. I work for a university. We run flight schools and stuff like that in the Appalachian region. And so I started to dig into when RFM and them first did their first story on the plane crash story, Nelson's plane crash. With my background in aviation safety, I was like, okay, there's more to this. And so I started to dig into it and pulled NTSB documents and looked for maintenance records. And I pulled the type of aircraft and I pulled the actual damage that was done, and, was able to show what exactly happened to the engine, and basically walked that story to a high level of detail. So I did that. And then, my other background is transportation. And so a few weeks ago, we were talking about, what kind of transportation development took place around Palmyra that would have unearthed materials. And so we talked about the digging of the Erie Canal and the creation of freeways and the digging of pipelines and all these things that crisscross that whole region around Palmyra, which should have turned up material and did it. So I like to take issues and kind of pick them apart and say, okay, well, if this exists, what would be the fallout, and try to follow that data as much as possible. So that's where I got involved with them. And then they asked me to co-host this episode on growing up with Satan, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, interesting.
I started doing TikTok about a year ago, and I would hop on, and if something bugged me, I would hop on and I would do 5 or 10 minutes talking about it. And a lot of really positive feedback on that. So that's kind of my background. And so you want to talk about, experience with finances, right? So I grew up in Missouri. So I was in the Independence, Missouri state in the late 80s and 90s, right? And at that point in time, like, we had active youth groups, and no one ever talked about what happens with the church's money. Why do we have money to do activities? Why do we not have money to do activities? So one of the things that really struggled with me when I moved around the country was seeing how different the finances were as you went from community to community. Because like I said, where I live now in Appalachia, the church may as well not even exist. We don't have youth activities. We didn't have anything, right? And so when the SEC issue broke, that was really it for me. I had all the doubts building it from 2014, but the dam broke for me at that moment, because as a regulatory guy, as somebody who sits down and reads federal regulation routinely, there was no way I could get around the ramifications of that, right? So my experience, Gene, when it comes to church finances and stuff like that, I'll chip in. But growing up in poorer populations and then living in Utah for the brief period of time I did, it's so obvious how money drives the church's narrative, how it drives how they see themselves, and it drives who gets what position. The joke about, is your bishop a dentist, is not because he's a dentist. It's because it means that he's financially viable and he understands operations and he can be trusted with money. And so that's, I'll chip in here, but that's, thanks for introducing me, but that's my background.
And also another thing we can talk about is, like, most of us that are older collected tithing, fast offerings, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Door to door.
Well, they still do that.
And that goes directly to the members, right? Supposedly. But the other thing is, because I did that, and because my dad paid a lot of tithing, I grew up thinking that people who were indigent were being taken care of by the church, so I didn't have to personally give them money.
Yep.
I already gave at the office, right? We already did it at church, and so it's just their fault for not figuring out where to go collect, right? And so that's a feeling I had. Did anybody else have that feeling that you already paid tithing? And so Megan probably gave sandwiches and did stuff for homeless people. I know, but gave them blankets. But anyhow, that was my experience.
Yeah, no, it was exactly the same way for me. In fact, I would argue that people who pay tithing and pay fast offerings are actually disincentivized from giving to real charities because they feel that they've already done it. They don't comprehend that the church is not a charity or doesn't behave like one. And so when you could be giving to your local food bank or the Methodist mission in town or something like that, we don't do that. we don't even go to collect food for those without making a big display of ourselves, right? So yeah, Gene, I agree 100%.
I was on my mission when I found out that tithing didn't go to helping the poor, helping feed those in need. I was on my freaking mission. I always thought I was doing my part in helping the poor and needy by paying my tithing, but I was actually building a mall in Salt Lake City. So,
Hey, it's a
Or
nice
buying
role.
a whole bunch of farmland in Nebraska.
And I thought everybody had food storage. I thought everybody took care of themselves and were self-sufficient. I didn't imagine members that weren't prepared.
And if they weren't prepared, they were in error because they weren't following the prophet.
yeah, you know what's
You
funny?
can still go
I
to
can't
the
tell you how
storehouse,
many
though.
times I have. Can't tell you how many times I have bought, my year's supply and then thrown it away, and then repurchased and threw it away, because it's hard to use out of a 500-gallon thing of rice or beans or
Oh, no,
open
it's
canned
not.
food
That's
for
my
a kid.
childhood.
It reminds me of a
It's
story
like
when
they
I
keep
moved
telling me
out.
that it's coming.
When I moved out, like 2009 or something, and my grandma was like, "Hey, you want some crackers?" She gave me like a box of crackers, and I ate one, and it tasted like a crayon. So it was like the date. It
Yeah.
was like 1985. I was like,
Yep.
older than I was.
But
Like,
how did they draw?
yeah, they're pretty nice. But yeah, I was just like, wow, that's food storage for you.
They used crackers. Yeah, my parents were the same way. There were things in their pantry that could have been sold for antiques, and they were eating that stuff.
Just a minute. Gene, I just sent you the Widow's Mite report link, so you can put that in the chat also.
The IRS. Oh, there's another one.
This is the Widow's Mite report. This is the link to the report.
Oh yeah, and
But
I've also
but you have to-
included that in a description of the video. So if people look,
Okay.
check below, there should be in the description.
Okay. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Randy. Go on.
I
Continue.
want to
nothing else.
point
Well,
out
here's-
as well in the Salt Lake Tribune article that the Widow's Mite report estimates that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is going to be worth $1 trillion within 25 years, even if they're only getting a 6% return on their portfolio, which is kind of low considering how aggressively they invest. They're still going to be worth $1 trillion. And no, like we can't even really comprehend what $1 trillion means.
No.
Considering if they have 300 billion, again, if they spent $1 million every single day, it would take them 800 years to run out of money.
Just so crazy, because if you think about the 1910 or 1908 statement from Joseph F. Smith, where he's like, look, we see a day where we're no longer going to have to ask for tithing, right?
Have to pay. Yeah.
So those statements are out there. And I was deep digging one day, and I actually put together a list of all the changes to tithing. I went through and found quotes, all that kind of stuff. Who should pay, who should not pay. The fact that they are still pushing this, the fact that they are still saying, well, even the poor should be paying their tithing, the fact that they're still taking money from the poorest of the poor. And you have to think, at what point in time does the poorest person in West Virginia who gives tithing, does that money go to upgrading a temple, or is their money going into Ensign Peak? And that's the question that people should be asking, right? I mean, it's almost criminal the way it's manipulated, and these populations are abused. They don't actually care about people at all.
I think it's more. I don't think it's about the money as much as they want more commitment. So when you pay all this money, you're going to be less likely to leave. So sunken cost fallacy.
Sunk cost fallacy, exactly.
Yeah. So that's what is a bigger factor, I think.
Yes.
The
When
Lord
I was just
does
a
not
little
need
pecker.
your money.
Sorry, what?
That should be my alarm for when I wake up.
Hey, Susan
Thanks
just
for
said
that.
it. Susan just said the Lord does not need your money.
when I was just a little kid, every week before primary, I'd go all through my room. I'd empty my bank. I'd go to my mom and dad and ask if they had any spare change, because up front they always had a can that said Children's Primary Hospital, and we would have to bring change. Well, we were asked to bring change and put it up in the can. And, I always felt proud if I could walk up and drop money in the can.
Oh,
And
yeah,
do you remember
we
that?
we had a paper bank of the Children's Hospital at primary, and you used to bring your pennies and put your pennies in the bank. I remember that.
Yeah.
I always had to
Yeah.
have pennies on Wednesdays for primary, so I could put the pennies in the bank for the Children's Hospital. And there was a song we sang. There was a
Well,
song we sang.
that $260 billion, a lot of it is from my change when I was a kid. Every week I would get a bunch.
Okay, I have one more.
He made a promise to his children that he would open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Not only that, tithing will keep your name enrolled among the people of God and protect you in the day of vengeance and burning.
Fire insurance.
So I remember being taught, right? I remember being in Missouri, and there was always these discussions about what Zion would look like, right? And what was his name? The guy who wrote The Refiner's Fire, Ayers, one of the members of the 70s in 1970s, writes this
Dyer.
book. Dyer. Alvin R. Dyer, that's it.
Dyer.
Well, Alvin R. Dyer in this book has this entire section about how your place in Zion, the size of your lot, what your inheritance is based upon you paying tithing into the system. And I remember as a kid hearing this and being like, how is that supposed to work? Like, hey, you're
multi-level Mormonism.
It is. It makes Mormonism a country club. You're paying for access to the higher blessings, which are all completely subjective, right? But yeah, it's just it goes back to like what we talked about earlier on the other podcast, right? It's this idea of Satan, right? It's this idea if you're not paying enough, well then you're not righteous enough. You don't get that protection. You're going to be handed over to the buffeting of Satan. And I remember I used to know Cleon Skousen. So I used to go up to his house up there in Sandy. I would sit there in his house. Like that's one of the people I learned from. And I remember talking to him. And I was poor. I was getting married to my wife, and I was like, "Look, I don't have money to pay tithing and pay rent and live in Utah because this place is." I have to edit my thoughts because I'm about to swear. Freaking expensive. I remember he's like, "Just pay it," because then he goes on and tells me how he's paying 50% tithing on all of his income.
What?
Right? Because we're told that the blessings you get, these metaphysical, and the church doesn't have to deliver a damn thing. How can you, as an institution, promise people something that you are not personally responsible to deliver and call yourself ethical?
I'm going to claim some of that tithing because I bought some Cleon Skousen books. So I get credit for some of that.
I think they're hilarious now, right? I mean, the 5,000 years or whatever that was a delicious
That's
book.
right.
It was hilarious.
Randy's dad was a diamond distributor in the multi-level Mormonism.
Diamond platinum.
Yeah, no.
If a destitute family is faced with the decision of paying their tithing or eating, they should pay their tithing.
Right, Randy?
Tithing is delicious.
Randy's turn.
I don't remember now.
I don't have enough alcohol in me right now to watch that.
I should be on a loop watching kids in Africa, that don't have food. I should be playing that in the loop.
I told my sister, TBM, the other day that that was delivered in a general conference about if it comes to feeding your kids or paying your tithing, you always pay your tithing. And she wouldn't believe me that was spoken by a general authority. So I need to get that clip and send it to her. She also didn't believe me about the one small cup of coffee keeping you from your eternal salvation. I sent that to her last night, but I didn't get a response. Jason Woolard.
I'm shocked.
I had a
Hi,
hardship.
Jason.
I had a financial hardship in the 90s. A former spouse quit paying child support. I had to get a lawyer and do all kinds of things, and it was very challenging. But the process of it meant there was no money for food. And so I went to my Relief Society president and explained everything. And then she went to the bishop, and I didn't set foot in a grocery store for 6 months. The bishop's storehouse provided everything: brooms, mops, tampons, you named it. And I'm bringing this up because I don't think the church is the same way I don't think it treats its members the way it treated me. I don't think that they really get much benefit from the programs that currently exist the way we
Well,
used to, because they're not giving money for them.
when was
They,
this? How long ago
uh,
was this?
this was
90s.
in 1992 in
Okay.
Illinois.
It was different in the 90s
Okay.
because I didn't ask for it. I guess my wife said something to the bishop. But we were on assistance also. We got all kinds of food. Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot different.
Even in
So-
the 2000s, we still, we received it. The assistance.
Yeah. So when my wife and I were first married, we were very, very poor. We would go to the bishop, and I was super scrupulous. Like, I would take my financial statements, put together a spreadsheet, and show the bishop, this is why I don't have money. Okay. Because I felt responsible to do that. I also felt a huge amount of shame coming from the Benson era about being on food stamps. And so I would not go on food stamps because I was told that was the dole and that was communism or whatever the hell that was, right? So I beat myself up about that, okay? And so we did get assistance, and we got a lot of assistance. We had DI that we could go to, and but now my understanding of it now is that the church will actually, before they give you assistance, they will ask you if you're on welfare from the state first.
Mhm.
And so what's happening is
Or if your family's helping.
that's right, yeah. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to push that responsibility off more and more and more, so that they don't have to be responsible for people. At the same time, they say, oh, well, we're going to give you this class so you can be, so there's this cheap ass class we put together so you can have financial principles. And so my understanding is, even from 2005, when Deb and I first got married, to now, they have backed off the amount of aid that they're willing to give people, which doesn't make sense to me.
What I think of is, the story of the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, because if Mormonism was really doing what Jesus would do, they would give freely to everyone. I think that when there was the miracle of the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, Jesus did not say, oh, you know what, guys, me and my disciples, we're going to be traveling a lot. So we're going to go ahead and take all of this and we're going to hoard it for ourselves. We're going to go ahead and hang on to this because we're going to need it sometime in the future. No, what he did was he actually gave all of it away. And what LDS Incorporated is doing right now is hoarding all of it and saying, we're going to need this, guys. Sorry, the rainy day that happened in Texas, the flooding, sorry, that's not the emergency we were looking for. Sorry, the hurricane, nope, that's not the emergency we were looking for. The rainy day is sometime in the future. We're not going to try to eradicate homelessness. We're not going to try to alleviate child starvation right now, not right now, because sometime in the future, we need this $300 billion for another time in the future. When Jesus comes, he's going to need us to do all kinds of things with this money. Forget the fact that if Jesus and God were really omnipotent and omniscient, they could do whatever they wanted. They don't need any money for the second coming. So whatever LDS Incorporated is telling you about hoarding that money for some future emergency, sorry, the emergency is happening right fucking now.
Right now.
Somebody needs to put together a Photoshop that's got a church accountant it's smog, right? It's smog. It's to pour it under the mountain. Somebody needs to put a missionary tag on smog and put that up there, because that's really what we're looking at here.
But see, when we had a member of our ward who was also on high council, and he worked for the church, that he also got his house paid for, their cable TV, all kinds of stuff paid for out of welfare funds. So depending on your position in the state, depending on how much welfare you got. I don't know if it's still that way.
I'd seen a Mormon stories. It also depends on where you are in the world, because
Yes.
there was the bishop in Mexico saying how they don't even have the same handbook. They don't have the same requirements as a bishop here in the U.S.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really it's one of these things where, you know, when in terms of church finances, when you start pulling the string on it, right? Like Maven just mentioned missions, right? So they're charging people, you know, $500 a month to go on a mission. If this was truly God's kingdom, then they wouldn't have to worry about paying for it themselves, right? That money could go somewhere. You know, and if you think about the way missionary work is done, how wildly productive would it be if it wasn't about proselyting, if it was about example? And
Exactly.
they won't do that, right? Because missionaries don't actually teach anything. They teach the most recent iteration of the church's message. That's it. Okay. And that's what they're limited to. So they're paying for that option. And the church is basically like, we're going to encourage missionary work. We want you to do the missionary work, but we really don't want to pay for it. And so they take the money, and then everything that's above and beyond that, they pay with that out of tithing funds. But the question is, right, is when you raise these issues of church finances, people get very touchy. Oh, you're just obsessed with this. You're obsessed with that. What level of disclosure of the church's financial responsibilities would you guys would you guys want to see? Because before 1950, before the church almost bankrupted itself building buildings, right?
Right.
They used to do this every 3 years or every couple years. They would give those finances. Then
1959 was the last year that they did it.
Because they went on a building spree. They almost bankrupted themselves by $10 million. They didn't want to admit anything because it would make them look bad. And so they say, okay, we're not going to give these numbers away anymore. So my question is, what would you guys want to see that would make you comfortable with the church's disclosure?
I want to see their finances.
Complete transparency. Like nothing less than complete transparency, because that's what every other nonprofit organization, that's the standard that they are held to. They should be reporting everything on their church website. We should know exactly where their funding is going. The members should know that there is a paid clergy. Maybe not at the local level, but they should know that the general authorities get a stipend. They should know that the general authorities get $1 million loan that they can use to pay off debt or to fund their retirement. They should know that the general authorities have access to a commissary where they basically get all of their needs taken care of. They should know that the general authorities and their wives and their families get a car. They get a clothing allowance. The members should know everything. There should be full disclosure. If they're asking members to give 10% of their money, if they're asking members to choose to pay their tithing instead of feeding their children, they should know exactly where that money goes. 100%.
I wonder what Jesus
all
would
the time.
do. I wonder what Jesus would do if he were running a church.
He wouldn't need finance. That's the whole thing. If Jesus were running a church, he would not be asking people to give their money to it.
But members
Well,
get
here's
full
some-
disclosure also at the end of the year with your tithing settlement. So the church
Here's
should
something fun. My dad was a very wealthy man. I didn't grow up in a wealthy atmosphere because he was very frugal, but he bought and sold land and had millions. And he felt like the only way he could make it into the celestial kingdom was to buy his way in, because he felt guilty, and he never told us why. But he donated all that money to the church, and he paid for, donated land for temples and chapels. And you know what I mean? Yeah, that kind of pisses me off, to be honest. because every month or two, the general authorities were knocking at his door in Arizona with a bag of potatoes from Idaho or a thing of chocolates from some chocolate factory in Utah, asking for more money. And so they literally built him out of almost everything he had. So when he passed away, we kids didn't inherit that. And I don't care. I mean, I don't have to inherit money to make it, but it bugs me that it went to the church, and it really bugs me that they would make him feel so special by bringing all these gifts to him saying, we need more money. And he'd whip out his check and write it.
Megan, did you want to talk about Maven's comment?
What?
Sorry, Gene. What? Oh, so
do you want to talk about that? Because I don't remember clicking on that.
The financial responsibility class includes being sure to pay tithing. Yeah, I mean, also just, to Randy's point right now, a former bishop in the church confirmed to me that there, is one of the quorum of the 12 apostles who is assigned to go around to all of the largest donors in the church and ask them to give more and say, oh, you gave $1 million in tithing this year. Couldn't you really afford to give more if you have that much to give? That
right.
came from a sitting bishop in the church that told me that. Just as far as, what Maven is saying is basically that, and I don't know, maybe I'm mischaracterizing. So Maven, I don't know if you want to, restate your comment. But just basically they lie to us about what the money is for, and then they shame us if we don't give enough. And also the main leadership of the church is chosen from those who pay the most tithing. When they go to choose a new bishop or a new stake president, they look at the tithing records and they see who's paying the most, and that's who they choose.
Well, I think part of Maven's comment is this too, is there's a talk by Jeffrey R. Holland out there, right? And he's talking about tithing. He says tithing is not something you pay, it's discharging of a debt. Okay. And I remember hearing that being like, good God, right? But one of the things they do in this financial class is, they teach you financial principles, but the first financial principle is to pay your tithing first. And so even though they're saying, hey, you need to learn finances, the implicit in what their idea of finance is that you have to give to them. And by going this whole thing of going to rich people in the church and asking them for more, that's how they funded Prop 8. That's how they tried to get around getting caught for it, because they would send notes out. And in the 1970s, they did the exact same thing. They tried to push a constitutional ballot in California to ban pornography. It was Proposition 18 in 1978. And they funded that. They had people volunteering in ward houses, but they funded it by going to all the rich members in California and saying, hey, we need to get this on the ballot, okay? That's how they've done it for years. And that's how they avoid accountability for taking their political stances, right? They say, well, it's a moral issue. But they fund all of these things by going to the members who are all Bensonite and they're all McConkeyites, and until that generation dies away, that's what we're dealing with. And they ask them for more, and then they fund their clandestine operations that way. And I will bet you, that is how they are funding the payouts to go to people who have been sexually assaulted, because you can guarantee it, that's not coming out of any fund that they're going to be able to track. They're asking people to pay for that. That is my feeling on that.
You're probably right about that.
Sorry, I get angry every time I talk about that. It makes me mad.
Well, there was also the 2000 one with DOMA.
Yes. Yeah, which was written in part by Lynn Wardle at BYU, right? It came out of that institution. I know because I ran a congressional campaign for Lynn. Well, I didn't run his campaign, but I helped him run for office years ago against Jason Chaffetz, right? So he was very involved in DOMA. The church was very involved in that. And again, that was all part of going to those rich members and asking for them to pay for stuff.
I don't know which proposition it was.
Here's another good use of tithing money, funding Prop 8 in California.
And
Well,
look how that turned out.
Don't forget Jesus's shopping mall. You know, I mean,
Yeah, and he
bailing out
hates gay
beneficial
people.
life.
He hates the pride movement. Just ask the church. They'll tell you. They'll tell you, like I put on my Facebook today, they'll tell you who to love and who not to love. They'll tell you if you're allowed to love this minority group or this downtrodden group. But whatever you do, don't exercise love, charity, and goodwill towards men unless you have their permission.
How much would it cost for the church to say, okay, we have this situation, we have this insidious Trumpism that is harming families? Because they came out with this statement, said, hey, these families are being harmed. If you really want to help those people, set up a means for those people to get out of that situation. Set up a means for them to become citizens if they want. You want to talk about a charitable act? Throwing money into a fund by which people could draw on that and gain that freedom so that they don't have to be terrorized anymore. That is a Christian act.
Well, didn't they
Removing
get
people
rid of
from
the
threat.
perpetual immigration fund? Didn't
Yeah,
they
but
get
you
rid
had
of
to pay
that?
that money back, right?
Yeah,
had to pay that back with
exactly.
interest.
Exactly,
You know?
with interest.
Yeah, I mean, how insulting is that? And they do the same thing for education now, too. It's never about being charitable. They're always taking a percentage back. And that goes back to this whole idea that money is godly. What was his name? Rick Kerber, right? You guys remember him, the free capitalist? He had the billboards all over Salt Lake for a while, went down by the SEC for the largest Ponzi scheme in Utah history, okay? He got his idea because he would sit there and say, God is a capitalist. And he would always quote the first volume of Journal of Discourses, but that's where he got his idea. And Mormonism worships money. We always have. Joseph Smith did. That's why he promoted the people who gave him money to the highest positions, right?
Yep.
So we worship money, and the church as an institution does that. What was that?
It's like the ultimate American religion, Mormonism. It's kind of based on capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I interviewed once at Deseret Book. Okay, and I'm sitting down there in the old Deseret Book across the street from Temple Square, and the guy's talking to me, and he's like, well, how do you feel about upselling? And I'm like, I don't know what upselling is. And he goes, well, just because, I kid you not, this was the interview at Deseret Book. They go, just because somebody buys one book doesn't mean they won't buy two. And if they buy two books, it doesn't mean they won't buy three. And it's your job to maximize that sale. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wait, have you guys ever read Approaching Zion? And he's like, no. I'm like, well, it's on your bookshelf. It costs you $4 to print it, and you sell it for $40. But I think that's unethical. I didn't get the job, obviously. But that goes to show you that that's how they view money flowing into the church. It's never about me. It's always about the institution.
And it goes all the way back. It's baked into Mormonism. It is baked into it all the way from the very beginning. One of my ancestors, my fourth great grandmother, was the first woman in Norway to join the church. She and her husband joined together. And then tragically, her husband drowned at sea. He was a sea captain, but it was their dream to come to Utah. And so she took a boat from Norway to Denmark, and then from Denmark to the mouth of the Mississippi River in New Orleans, and then a boat all the way up to Missouri. And then she emigrated to Utah, where she became the seventh wife of some polygamous dude. And when she got to Utah, she owed the Perpetual Immigration Fund $50 plus interest. She had 4 young children. One of her kids had died at sea. And guess what? They made her pay back every penny plus interest. So don't tell me that the LDS Church has ever cared about the widows and the fatherless. They have not. It has always been a business proposition since the very beginning of time.
Like Jason Woolard pointed out, whatever happened to the money being the root of all evil? What about it's harder for a rich man to get through the eye of a needle? Wait, it's harder for a rich man
to get into heaven than the camel to get through the eye of a needle.
Exactly. What happened to all of that? Is that outdated now?
It's funny because if you read Hugh Nibley, he breaks into that, right? He talks about the word philogoria means not the love of money, but the love of excess, right? The real love of excess is the root of all evil. And so you go back and you read like this seminal Mormon theologian, right? And he condemns the institution that arises after his death, because it is the love of excess. It's gluttony. That's why gluttony is a sin, right? That's why lust is a sin. Lust is not about sex. Lust is about possession. Lust is about
Right.
acquisition. Lust is about control. The
Ferengis.
church is a lustful institution.
New name Job says the sure sign of them all. That's probably going to be the new entry into the temple. One of the handshakes.
I love
The
it.
International House of Handshakes.
You know what you find when you peek behind the green apron.
International
That's right.
House of Handshakes.
Oh,
Yeah.
The first time that I heard that, I was driving, through California, and I literally had to pull over and stop the car. It was during Nemo's, he was doing his end of the year recap or whatever, and I literally had to pull over and stop the car. It was the first time that I'd ever heard that, and I just died. There's nothing more accurate.
I'm going to
in the
use
world.
that forever. That's my new favorite
Yep.
thing. God.
I first heard it from Brother Jones.
That is too funny.
But second place is the sure sign of them all.
That's right.
Yeah.
oh, that's good. That's excellent. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
remember that.
So-
That was such a moment for me. Like the whole "let's go shopping," like President Monson. Man, yeah.
So
I'm sorry. Let's go shopping. I just like when that thing came out, I had young kids at home, we were struggling and I was paying my tithing going, we're barely making ends meet. And you want us to go to the Gap? Jesus needs the Gap?
You'd almost
What?
think he would say, there's a sale on, spend your this month's tithing at the mall and you get to, deduct it.
Oh, it just goes to show you, right? So I mean, I mentioned the other day, Jesus is a blank slate. He is literally whatever anybody wants him to be.
That's right.
Whatever
For sure.
concept you want to apply to Jesus, all you have to do is negotiate with the text and pull out something here and there, and he can be anything you want because we don't know anything about him, and
The Bible
or
is-
even what the historicity of him is, and so it's so manipulative.
Oh yeah, it's all kind of whatever you want it to, like what do they call it, the Rorschach test. It's kind of Bible.
Yeah.
You can make anything.
Ink
out
blot.
of
Whatever the import is.
it. Yeah, any position someone takes, you could find the opposite in the Bible if you took it.
Insanity.
Just a white canvas, whatever you want to paint on there.
Yeah.
So it says one of my family members was first group at SLC was given permission by Brigham Young to have a couple wives, and they settled in Santa Clara.
That's near me. That's 35 miles south of me.
Sorry, I'm so glad I don't live in Utah.
No, Santa Clara is by
Yeah.
St.
That's-
George.
It's up north.
Oh, that's Santa Clara.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sure.
that makes more sense.
Are you in
Pretty
California,
much
Gene?
I am. San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, I
Oakland,
served in
just south of
Roseville,
Oakland.
just up north of there.
Roseville.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, tie-dye. You can talk about the tie-dye. He's a Catholic guy.
My daughter served in Santa Rosa.
Huh. Remember Hinkley did? Yeah. Which is, it's so crazy. I mean, I would love to see, I frankly, like, I'm not somebody who carries a whole lot of bitterness towards the church because I just think it's, it's bad institutions, not bad people. But if it does come out that they've got tax evasion there, I would love to see that. Like, I feel like there needs to be a gut check to the institution. And so far, they are avoiding that gut check. They're avoiding the reality and the culpability of their role in facilitating sexual assault by paying everybody off. And one of the things that I was talking about this the other day is the church, the reason why they're using this money, whether it's tithing money or whether it's money that's raised from rich members to pay off all these sexual assault cases, right, that we don't see where this money comes from, is because they're culpable for putting these people in that position. This is an institution that, like I said, you can't volunteer. So every time they call somebody to a position of authority and place them over children, and that person ends up abusing, ultimately there's a case against the church for putting that person there to begin with. And that's why they're desperate to pay all this stuff out. That's why they're desperate for the secrecy. That's why they're desperate to keep all the finances under wrap, because once you start pulling the strings on that, the entire institution falls apart. And they can't control that narrative. And they desperately control the narrative.
It reminds me of whatever Toy Story episode it was where Buzz Lightyear's trying to use his controls. He thinks they're real. So that's the church, right? It's like, wait, the priesthood's real. The blessings work. All this stuff is real. Jesus really is my friend. And they got nothing. And so they just stick to the rules. And Maven's comment just there was another reason why they're going to get rid of the Book of Mormon, because stuff in the Book of Mormon just is not compatible with the church today.
You know, it's funny you should bring up Buzz Lightyear, Gene, because I was just about to say, I can't believe I'm going to compare Disney with the church because I hate to degrade Disney. But Walt Disney World, if someone dies on property, everyone is instructed that that person is not dead until they get across county lines, and then they can be pronounced dead. If someone has an accident at, let's say, the Magic Kingdom, their little baby's finger gets clipped off when they fold up a stroller. Someone gets hit by a tram in the parking lot. Disney is right there to pay them off. They have deep pockets, and they'll pay the people off immediately and have them sign something that says there will be no further action, because they want to remain the happiest place on earth. And they are. I love Disney. But it's just very interesting, the juxtaposition between the Walt Disney Company and the organization of the Mormon Church. Same type of deal. The Mormon Church wants to get people shut up, paid off, no bad press. With Disney, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because they really are the happiest place on earth. But it's not okay for the frickin' church.
Well, Disney's just a company. They don't pretend to speak.
Right. The church is not supposed to be a company.
Church is a corporation.
Yeah, they're both corporations.
The difference is Disney sells a tangible product. It's something you can put your hands on. Like if they say that they're going to deliver a Buzz Lightyear toy, you're going to get a Buzz Lightyear toy. The church says you're going to get a blessing. You have to rationalize what that blessing is going to be. It could be
the church is selling mansions in heaven that they're not real.
They're selling mansions in adjacent to the temples because they buy the land around the temples and then they build houses
That's
on
right.
it.
It's a land deal.
Yeah, so they are selling real estate. So, and in that case, hey, they're, just stealing farmland from farmers in Nebraska and Australia.
Yeah. The church sells you the opportunity to live with your family for all time and eternity, just so long as you're worthy.
Yeah, which again is something they don't have to deliver on. They make all the promises in the world, but there's no ethical responsibility to deliver on a single promise. And they charge you for the opportunity to receive the promise. It's nuts. And I never thought for a moment, even 10 years ago, that I would say this with the conviction that it's truth, right? Like how weird is it that our lives took a turn where we were raised in this institution and now we're here looking back and going, what can we do to make change so people don't have to go through this? Right? Waxing philosophical here, I'll stop.
You're fine.
I think I saw MB ask how much Disney was worth, and they're only worth $209 billion.
Yeah, church is
Yep, 200 billion. So sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the church is worth $300 billion.
Well, does
you
anybody
know,
else have any experience and thoughts about how the church handled finances, either when they were young or when they were just starting out in marriage and education? There was one benefit. Our daughter went to BYU. We got a little bit less tuition that we had to pay than if she went somewhere else. and she got all the religious training she could use.
Is she still a member?
No.
That's good. Worked out.
That's not really a benefit. It just means that her tuition was subsidized by some family that could never actually go there.
Yeah, true.
Right.
That's right.
I mean, it's just socialism.
Thanks to all the South American tithing payers who prop up, and the Canadian. Remember the Canada
the Canadians
tithing went to. They said it was going to BYU, and that was a little bit of a kerfuffle.
Well, here's a little bitch. When I was on my mission, there were 2 occasions where my companion and I didn't have enough money to buy food. And we had to go without. We were able to scrape together enough change to go buy popcorn at the market. And you can buy a lot of popcorn in Spain and pop it to eat and survive. But twice I had to resort to that because we didn't have enough money to pay what we needed to pay. And when I hear about the value of the church and the hard times we had, financially we didn't have heat because we couldn't afford the gas to heat the water in our apartment. All of these things that we couldn't afford on my mission because it was a luxury. We couldn't have meat unless it was from the bullfights or it was a beef tongue that we would have ground up. But we didn't have enough money for that stuff. And I'm hearing about the church being worth $290 billion with a B. That's rhymes with P, and that stands for pool. Right here in River City.
Trouble in Salt Lake City.
We got trouble.
Right, that's right. Right here in River City.
Imagine what a difference it would make in the local communities, right? So, like I said, where I live, the church might as well not exist. But what would happen to the local communities, especially the rural communities where members live, if the tithing was to stay like it does in the Catholic Church, right? So when people pay tithing in the Catholic Church, it goes to the diocese, and the diocese, okay, they have a very small area, and the money stays within the diocese. It keeps up the buildings in the region, the cathedrals. So imagine what would happen if instead of all that money going directly back to Salt Lake, it just stayed within the ward. And then if the ward needed more money, they could say, hey, look, we need some more money for this region. I mean, the members could actually engage in their communities. They could actually do the parades. They could actually build floats. They could actually hold events. They could actually do things that would make the wards part of the community where they exist, like all the other churches. But instead they don't. We can't even use the kitchens in the wards anymore because they don't want to pay the insurance that's necessary for us to run the oven. Okay?
Really?
So how can you sit there and say that you're a thriving, growing organization when you won't even fund the local communities that would be the obvious way to grow the membership?
Well, they don't even
That's right,
have
Jim.
insurance. They self-insure.
Well,
so they don't have insurance.
I was just reading a post on Reddit that the bishop
they don't want to pay out.
That the bishop is now in charge of young men's and just everything else he does, and that they don't have Boy Scouts anymore, so they just go to church and play video games for what young men's or whatever it is now. They don't go out. They don't go anywhere. What do they need money? We used to have campouts and stuff that we had money for.
Right.
What are they spending the money on? How do they justify now that they've lost? I mean, the young men and young women's programs are pretty much dead. They don't do anything.
Boy Scouts is done.
Boy Scouts are gone. Boy Scouts are gone.
The Boy Scouts
I think what really frustrated
me.
me, one of the things that really frustrated me the most is that when my girls wanted to go to girls camp or when my boys wanted to go to scout camp, they had to do a fundraiser to raise the $150 or whatever that it cost for them to go to camp. My girls had to bake cookies and then sell them to the ward members in order to raise their $120 or $130 that it cost them to go to a 4-day camp. Like, what makes me so angry is that the church has plenty of money. They could afford to hire janitors for every building that they own, giving much needed jobs to people who are unemployed. They could afford to hire counselors in every single ward, or at least a mental health consultant in every single stake that could refer all of these abuse victims to get the help that they need. They could afford to do background checks on every single individual who works with youth.
Yeah.
They could afford to employ people to, make sure that the only people that are working with the youth and the young people in the wards are people who have been vetted. They could afford to do all of this, and it would not make a dent. Like their surplus is $1 billion a year, so they could very comfortably afford to spend another $500 million a year to protect children, but they won't do it. They don't care. That's the whole thing that I've gotten out of this entire investigation into all of the abuse cases that the church is covering. Tim Kosnoff, who's the main attorney who's gone against these guys for the last 4 decades, that was the one thing that he said that was the most profound. They could do all of these things to change the fact that people are being abused every day in the church, but they won't, because they don't care.
They don't care.
Right.
All they care about is the money. That's all they care about anymore.
Instead, they would rather that the members go and clean these chapels and temples and do all of the manual labor so that they don't have to pay for it. Let's take them away from their families even more. Like we don't, like we weren't away from our families enough.
They want 10% of your money, and they want 10% of your time, at least. They want more than 10% of your money, and they want more than 10% of your time. But they're telling people, we want 10% of your time. The Lord gave everything, so you can give them back your 10%. That's their philosophy.
Yeah, who are they paying tithing to? Who does the church pay tithing to?
The church doesn't answer to anybody. Like, that's the bottom line. They don't ask for apologies. They don't seek or give apologies. They're not accountable for anything.
In fact, God asks them if permission to do something.
Has anybody watched the 12-part or 8-part series on religion that those guys did? Going Mormon Stories a few weeks ago. I watched the whole series.
Oh yeah, the producers of that. I don't remember what their names are, but yeah.
Yeah, but no church, none of the churches in America are sharing that information. They share basic funding, but they don't tell you how much the parsonage gets paid, how much they're paying for the rent or anything. They give basic financial information, but they don't give the details. So no church in America is doing that.
But there might be a lay committee that knows.
Maybe.
Because, they hire the pastors.
Well,
right.
The ones with no
what the
money,
finances are.
The ones with no money probably are afraid to show books. They have nothing.
Amen, Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people should have a say as to where the money goes. We're the ones. I act like I'm still active in the church. The members are the ones that are paying all this money in. It kind of seems like they might have a say as to which charitable organizations they'd like that money to go to.
That's right.
Let's help people.
Right.
But instead, it's all about the investment funds.
Read the tithing slip.
Well, they vote on everything, right?
It tells you very specifically that they will try to put the money. So they don't even guarantee you that the money you give in fast offerings is going to go to fast offerings.
Nope.
You don't have to.
Read the covenant you make in the temple, where everything you have or will have or will promise to make anywhere in your life belongs to the church.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's not about individuals, and which is really funny, because if you look at the church's new marketing, right? If you look at Facebook, which I'm inundated right now with, God knows how many, and all these messages, but it's always about, are you lonely? Are you looking for a church family? It's all of this stuff that the language is designed to manipulate lonely people who need community. And the church is desperately trying to present itself as the one to deliver that community and that relationship with Christ. Okay.
Yeah. Only desperate people do it, you know.
Yeah,
You gotta
but
find the
they
desperate
can't
people.
do that because they set so many regulations on how they deal with money, how they control money, and how they control the organization that they will never actually be able to deliver what they are currently promising people and what
Well,
we
it's always
promise
the
people on our
case.
missions.
They've never delivered what they promised anyone
No.
since the beginning of the church.
Yeah. And
Nope.
if it's all tied to faith. Was
Yeah.
that a dog?
Yeah, Chihuahua playing through.
Yes, that's my little Oliver kitty. He's on my lap the whole time I'm podcasting all the time, but he got a little antsy, and
Little heater.
so I had to put him over on the chair beside me.
Yeah. Maven's right here, by the way. That's what that weasel said on 60 Minutes. I love that term, weasel. That smug look he got when he was trying to answer questions was just so infuriating.
Oh,
It's
he's
Brother
a-
Weasel or Elder Weasel to you, Maven.
Elder Weasel.
I'll say.
President Weasel, as far as I'm concerned.
Could have been Bishop Weasel, right? Could have been somebody in the first bishopric, whatever they call it.
Yeah. I'm gonna hop off. It's 11:30 here, and I've got
All
meetings at like 6 a.m. tomorrow.
We'll schedule on Latter Daily Digest. We'll revisit the airplane thing, and we'll see.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, you get me talking about something in my wheelhouse, I'll go for 2 hours. I've still got my slides. I would love to just go through that. We can talk about it again. It would be a lot of fun.
Every year we
We
got to
appreciate you coming on, Jim.
Thank you,
call
Jim.
it
Give me a call
Nailing
anytime.
Nelson.
Nailing Nelson.
I'd love to be around. Let me know what else you guys need. Just
Right.
let me know. You guys
Thanks.
are great.
Okay.
Excellent.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Maven has met Oliver Kitty. And Gene have both met Oliver Kitty.
I'm going to jump off as well, you guys. Thanks for having
All right.
me. Have a great
We'll
night.
see ya.
See you again soon. Take
Bye,
care.
Megan.
Right.
I need to send Megan my address. I will do that right now.
Kinder Kim asked a question for you, Randy.
You had that director on a few days ago. You did the Mormon horror. Oh, yeah. I jumped through to see the trailer. It's about a minute long. Oh, no. Really? Disappointing? I still have yet to see it.
If the trailer's any longer, you've almost seen the whole short anyway. So, but I will say that Randy's well, we're hopeful there'll be showings near you sometime. If you go to the description of the show and click on the newsletter, they'll send you a newsletter of where they're traveling throughout the country to air the short. And maybe someday we'll even put the whole short on Latter Daily Digest once something like that happens.
I don't know, Kinder Kim, if you saw the interview. I know that you mentioned that you knew about it, but he's a member of the church. I didn't know that when we first started to interview him, but that kind of surprised me a little bit.
That's the good thing. That's what Latter Daily Digest is hoping to do, is to get members in the church that are thinking for themselves, thinking outside the box. It gives permission for their fellow members to start thinking for themselves.
Yeah, he was very pleasant. I enjoyed that interview.
And we have another interview coming out. Do you want to let our family know what's coming out soon? We
I think
interviewed
that they should
Cheryl.
know.
The ghost of Gordon V.
Talk about the Cheryl interview.
Are you talking to me?
Randy.
We interviewed Cheryl Bruno, who's, she's also a member of the church. She's a polygamy skeptic. I can't remember the term that she was saying that she prefers, but I think a polygamy skeptic was one of them. Feels that Joseph Smith was not a polygamist.
No,
and
wait.
has a
not
lot
Cheryl.
of.
So Cheryl
No.
believes Joseph Smith was a polygamist, but she was defending.
Oh yeah, that's right. She was
who
defending
are
those.
Joseph Smith monogamy affirmers.
Geez,
having their
Gene, we do
opinion.
so many podcasts. You expect me to remember stuff?
This is a test. It's
Yeah.
a quiz.
Yeah, that's true. She was defending the polygamy skeptics. And yeah, that was interesting too.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So anyway, and everybody, Randy, Megan, and I are doing a Sunday, we'll say afternoon show, most of America, and it's called the Salt Lake Expositor. So we're bringing back the Nauvoo Expositor and rebranding it the Salt Lake Expositor. And
We'll be in our superhero.
Megan's going to
costumes.
dig deep.
She's a good one to dig deep.
She's getting the claws out, I'll say. So watch
Dig
out,
deeper.
SCMC. I'm sure
Sure, they're scared.
you're watching, although probably not anymore because Megan's gone. But anyway, if you are still here, Megan's got she's got on the lookout. She's on the hunt.
Ha 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 ha.
Well, any
All
other
right.
tithing thoughts or the way the church finances worked in your life or didn't work?
I never paid a full tithing. I admit it.
Neither did I.
Me
I
neither.
was horrible at tithing.
Well, neither one of you are going to the temple anytime soon. I'll see to
I
that.
don't care. I'd much rather tear it down than go into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you got, Gene?
Even though I did get one of these,
It's turned
I think
into
I
a
paid for
fashion
one
show.
You still got to recommend?
I still have it's not a good one, but this is one of my old recommends.
We should print up a bunch of them and just mail them out.
Yeah.
And say,
print 'em a
come
bunch and
visit us
mail
in
'em
the
out.
temple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's signed and everything. So
Yeah.
see if we can
Come
get
and
in.
join us.
Yeah.
Come and join us.
We get a good scanner. Yeah.
I've got a barcode.
Now that Mike Norton's no longer doing Mormon stuff, somebody has to start sharing them.
That's right. So he was been the member of the ex-Mormon 70, traveling throughout the world, doing the Lord's work. Every ex-Mormon a missionary, and he's now into the sunset.
He's given up on Mormonism. He's left it all behind him. So
Thanks, Bill Law. You'll love it. You'll love the show.
It was good. I watched it.
It's a live call-in show. So
Right, because we want to democratize the news.
Anyone who wants to call in on Sunday, we try to take every phone call we get and answer the questions. And thank you all for coming, by the way, all of you listeners who are saying goodbye. We really appreciate you tuning in, and please remember to just hit that like button before you go.
yeah, like, share, and
the more
subscribe.
of those we get, the better our show gets. And, and we ask for your tithing as well. Just kidding. Just like and subscribe would be great.
That way I can get some money to do some things, maybe.
I'm thinking about starting a competition to the Mormon Church. 5% tithing. And like Megan's idea, drive-by sacrament meeting. You just, in a line, you just take the sacrament in the car and just go in the parking lot and out. Maybe they hand you the Relief Society newsletter.
But you got to pay. You got to pay.
And
it's like a toll, like a toll gate. There'll be a toll gate. You got to pay.
Like on Blazing Saddles.
Think about it. 5% tithing only. And the we promise the mansions are twice as big as the Mormon mansions. Right? Because truth in advertising, how are they going to fight us? Go ahead, Mormon Church.
Right on. Right on.
Try to prove that your mansions are as big as ours.
And I will be there to personally bless your sacrament for you. If you want it from Tim, I'll do it. I'll raise my arm.
Let's say goodbye to everybody. Thanks,
bye
for being in the chat.
Thank you.
And
thank you, everybody.
Anybody wants to join the after show, and maybe there will be some tea that's spilt about some things. You never know.
Who knows? Who knows?
Everybody have a good rest of 2025, and we'll
Yes.
see you next week
Take
and
care.
on all the other shows.